Ambassador Keffer of the Zephyrian Concordat adjusted his ceremonial robes. One final time as the transport ship descended through the crimson atmosphere of Varkus Prime. Beside him, the human bodyguard sat motionless, his dark eyes scanning the viewport with an intensity that made even the seasoned diplomat uncomfortable. "Sergeant Martinez," Keffer said, his voice carrying the melodic tones typical of his species, "I must remind you that this is a diplomatic mission. Violence should be our last resort." The human turned slightly, offering what might have been a smile. "Understood, Ambassador. Though I should mention humans have a different definition of last resort than most species. The war between the Varkosian Empire and the Hegemony Coalition had raged for 3 standard years. Entire star systems had been reduced to debris fields. Billions had died. The Zephyrian Concordat, as neutral mediators, had finally convinced both sides to attempt one last peace negotiation on the disputed world of Varkus Prime. What made this mission unusual wasn't the location, it was the bodyguard. Humans had only recently joined the galactic community, and their reputation preceded them like a shockwave. Stories circulated in the diplomatic corps, tales of impossible endurance, tactical brilliance that bordered on precognition, and a disturbing tendency to find solutions that more civilized species considered unthinkable. The Hegemony had insisted on bringing their elite crystalline guard warriors whose bodies were partially mineral, capable of deflecting energy weapons. The Varkosians had responded by sending their infamous shadow dancers, assassins who could phase partially out of normal space-time. The Concordat had brought Sergeant Elena Martinez, formerly of the 3rd Terran Marine Expeditionary Force. "Landing in 30 seconds, announced the pilot, a nervous Altarian whose tentacles kept shifting colors, a sure sign of anxiety. The conference was to be held in the Nexus Chamber, a massive crystalline structure built specifically for this negotiation. As they disembarked, Keffer noticed the human's posture change subtly. Her casual demeanor vanished, replaced by something that reminded him uncomfortably of the apex predators from his homeworld. "Something's wrong," Martinez said quietly, her hand drifting toward the weapon at her hip, a simple kinetic pistol that had drawn contemptuous looks from the other species' energy weapon-equipped guards. "What do you mean?" Keffer asked, though his own diplomatic instincts were beginning to whisper warnings. "The Hegemony delegation arrived 6 hours ago. The Varkosians have been here for 2 days. That's enough time to prepare surprises." As they entered the Nexus Chamber, Keffer saw representatives from both factions seated across from each other at the translucent negotiation table. The Hegemony's crystalline guards stood like living statues, their mineral-enhanced bodies gleaming under the chamber's soft lighting. The Varkosian shadow dancers were barely visible, appearing as slight distortions in the air. "Honored delegates," Keffer began, activating the universal translator. "We gathered today to the attack came from all directions simultaneously. The shadow dancers materialized fully, energy blades crackling to life. The crystalline guards raised barrier shields and drew plasma cannons. In the space of a heartbeat, what should have been a peace negotiation became a death trap designed to eliminate the mediating party and blame the other side for the massacre. Martinez moved. Later, military analysts would study the security footage frame by frame, trying to understand what happened in those 3 minutes. They would note how the humans seemed to predict each attack before it began, how she moved through the chaos with an efficiency that bordered on supernatural. The first shadow dancer to reach Keffer found himself facing not the diplomat, but the human bodyguard. Martinez's kinetic pistol spoke once a sound like thunder in the crystal chamber. The advanced alien assassin, capable of phasing through energy weapons, discovered that kinetic rounds cared nothing for dimensional tricks. Crystalline Guard's plasma cannon swiveled toward the ambassador. Martinez was there, somehow, her weapon speaking again. The guard's mineral-enhanced head simply ceased to exist above the neck. "Both sides are compromised," she called out, her voice cutting through the chaos. "This was planned. The remaining Shadow dancers tried to coordinate their attack, their forms flickering in and out of visibility. Martinez closed her eyes for one impossible moment, then opened them and began firing systematically at empty air. Each shot was rewarded with a very solid scream. The surviving crystalline guards formed the defensive formation, their barriers interlocking. Martinez studied them for perhaps 2 seconds, then drew her backup weapon, a simple fragmentation grenade. That would have been considered primitive by any civilized species. She didn't throw it at the guards. She threw it at the chamber's crystal ceiling. The explosion sent razor-sharp fragments raining down at angles that bypassed every energy shield. The guards fell, their advanced technology useless against gravity and sharp objects dot as the dust. Settled, Martinez stood in the center of the chamber, her weapon still ready, scanning for additional threats. Around her lay the evidence of 2 separate betrayals. Shadow dancers and crystalline guards who had been ordered to eliminate the peace talks and frame each other for the massacre. "Sergeant," Keffer said shakily, "how did you know?" Martinez lowered her weapons, but didn't holster them. "Ambassador, humans have been fighting wars since before we discovered fire. We've seen every possible betrayal, ambush, and false flag. Operation. When you've spent your species' entire history fighting yourselves, everyone else's tactics become predictable. The real delegates, the ones who had genuinely come to negotiate, were found bound and drugged in hidden chambers beneath the Nexus. The coup attempt had been orchestrated by military factions from both sides who profited from the continued war. Within hours, news of the attempted massacre spread across the galaxy. Both the hegemony and the Varkosian Empire, faced with evidence of their military's treachery and shamed by the intervention of a primitive human bodyguard, agreed to immediate peace talks. The war ended not through careful diplomacy or superior firepower, but because a single human had demonstrated something the galaxy had forgotten. Sometimes, the most sophisticated solution is knowing when to use the simplest one. As they prepared to leave Varkos Prime, Keffer turned to his bodyguard. "Sergeant, would you consider a career in diplomatic protection?" Martinez smiled, a genuinely warm expression this time. "Ambassador, I think the galaxy might need more humans in diplomatic positions. We have a talent for cutting through complications." Behind them, the Nexus Chamber stood as a monument to an important lesson. In a galaxy full of advanced civilizations, sometimes what you need isn't the most sophisticated warrior, you need the one who remembers that at the end of the day, physics still applies to everyone.